Welcome, everyone. I think we're okay to start, right? Okay. Welcome to the Western Placer Waste Management Authority meeting of the Board of Directors for June 12th, 2025. We are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Chair, that flag looks a little battle worn. Should we put a request into somebody for a? It looks a little faded.
Well loved to
It's
me.
well loved. Okay.
You can add it to next year's budget.
Not sure if there's enough.
Forget what I said.
Okay, can we do the roll call, please?
Yes. Director Halden.
Here.
Director Hadeschelt.
Here, I wasn't the quorum then, evidently.
Director Landon.
Here.
Director Reedy.
Here.
Chair Gore.
All right, I would like to point out that Director Halden is joining us remotely today. And will the clerk please read the statement of meeting procedures?
Welcome to the Western Placer Waste Management Authority meeting of June 12, 2025. Agendas are available on the table outside this meeting room. If you are here to speak on a matter not on the agenda, you may do so during public comment. The board is not permitted to take action on items addressed under public comment. All items on the agenda will be open for the public to address before final action is taken. Accessibility information is provided on the meeting agenda. Please turn off or put in silent mode all cell phones and other electronic devices. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you. Now is the time for public comment. This is a time when persons may address the board regarding any items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone here in the public who would like to make a comment? Okay.
I would like to have somebody make a comment.
Okay.
Could
Yes?
Brian, would you introduce yourself? Does everybody except me know you?
Poor Brian.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Jones. I'm with the City of Roseville. I'm acting refuse stormwater utility manager. Brian Craighead, who had this role before, got promoted to assistant director. So I'll be sitting in these meetings going forward.
Cool. We'll
right.
try and make them very exciting.
Oh, I can't wait.
Didn't I already? Thank you, Brian.
Okay, we'll move on to item 6A, report from the general manager.
Thank you, Acting Chair Landon. Exciting news on the MRF. For the last 2 days, for 8 hours straight, all of the belts have been running. So it looks like, feels like, sounds like a operating MRF. No material on the lines yet. That will start on Monday, and it's a 2-week wet testing phase, preparing for July 1st, where it's operational. So we're getting close. Operations has been working closely with FCC to adjust traffic flow patterns on site. We've been having some issues with construction, delays for the public, also for our commercial haulers. It hasn't been great, so we're trying to do what we can to get through the construction with as little disruption as possible, and Will's been working on that, so we're hoping for positive results. The final item is Module 6. Ryan submitted the final reports to the Water Board, so we're in the final stages and hoping to have approval to start filling that soon. That's
Great.
it.
Any questions for Mr. Schultz? We'll move on to 6B, financial reports.
Yes, thank you. Your board has the financials through May in your board packet, and we continue to track above our projections for revenues and below our projections for expenditures. So very solid as we're approaching near the end of the fiscal year. So any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, any questions?
None.
Moving on to monthly tonnage reports, we will.
Good evening tonight, Madam Chair, Board of Directors. Before you have the monthly tonnages through May. We're tracking mostly at or above our projections, especially for MSW, where you'll notice a pretty good increase. Didn't see any real anomalies that stood out that caused that. Across the board with all haulers, saw a general increase, so we like to see that. C&D, green waste, and wood waste are below projections. The C&D is likely the economic factor we discussed beforehand, less people doing home remodels and such, although I've started one myself. And then likely the wait times and the difficulties we discussed last month are kind of exacerbating that economic factor. But other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions your board may have.
All right, any questions on that?
And for me.
Okay, item 6D, annual MRF processing fee adjustment.
Thank you. So this item is the annual materials recovery facility processing fee adjustment, which is included in the agreement with FCC. It's effective July 1st each year. FCC's calculation of a 1.0689 inflationary adjustment factor is in line with the indices published by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics and changes in the California minimum wage. There's a table included in the memo, and it shows the year-over-year increase of 2.61%. There is sufficient funding in the current 2025-26 budget to account for the fee adjustments, and rates currently in effect will not be increased.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Sarah on that?
I did have one question I think I know the answer to, and it relates to 6D and 6E. Obviously, two different facilities, but also two different adjustments, 2.61 versus 0.79. So is that related to labor? Is that, what was the driver and why, you know?
They are calculated slightly differently, and
Okay.
Eric.
Yeah, they do use slightly different indices and different weighting factors, and the MRF side being more heavily labor dependent
Okay.
as a minimum wage component, which is not on the landfill side.
Thank you.
And sorry, I forgot about you, Director Holden. I kind of rushed through those other ones. Hopefully you didn't have any questions.
No questions.
Okay.
No problem. I'll speak up if
Okay, just yell at me.
get some. All right, thanks.
All right, moving on to 6E, annual landfill processing fee adjustment.
And this item, like the last, is for the landfill this time. It's also included in the agreement with FCC and effective July 1st of each year. So FCC's calculation of a 1.023 inflationary adjustment factor is also in line with the indices published by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. And then the memo includes the table showing a year-over-year increase of 0.79%. And again, sufficient funding has been included in the current 2025-26 budget to account for the fee adjustments, and rates currently in effect will not be increased.
All right, any questions on that? Moving to 6F, facility projects update.
Thank you, Director Landon, and good evening, Board. For the project updates, Scott definitely took some of my thunder, but glad for him to be able to give those updates. So I might touch on some of the same points here, but I'll try and keep it brief. For the MRF improvements for Phase 2, FCC anticipates resuming construction on the remainder of the interior and exterior ADA improvements in August. The main driver for that wait time is getting bids and quotes for the interior work. The exterior work is, ready to begin, but the same contractor will be doing both. So they're just waiting on interior quotes for that. For Phase 3A, Van Dyke is actively testing the equipment and working on dry commissioning. The equipment has ran continuously for 8 hours each day for the past 2 days. The fire protection crews are currently installing the fire suppression system under the equipment with an estimated completion by June 16th. Once all the fire sprinkler systems are in place below the equipment and commissioned by the fire marshal, FCC will begin wet testing and commissioning the equipment. The alarm system was tested by the fire marshal, and temporary certificate of occupancy has been granted. Fire watch remains in place for the duration of this portion of the construction. As Scott also mentioned, traffic plans are changing semi-regularly as construction in and around the MRF comes closer to completion. But we do expect that the permanent traffic plan will be implemented in the near future as construction comes to a close, specifically directly surrounding the MRF. For phase 3B, the CASP, construction of the densimetric table pad is on hold right now, pending some updated drawings from the design engineer. Demolition and excavation of a majority of the compost pad has been completed. They've been moving forward with that despite the densimetric table being held back. A portion of the excavation is on hold pending some environmental testing results and approval from the water board. And in order to meet 1383 compliance by July 1st, FCC has proposed using mobile CASP units to process the material until the permanent CASP unit, the CASP facilities are in place and commissioned for processing at no additional cost to the WATMA. As far as the certificate of occupancy, WATMA staff have submitted the surveyed roadway center lines to Placer County for their concurrence and adoption and are awaiting verification of those center lines. Upon agreement, staff will return to your board to approve the easement dedication. As an additional update that's not in here, we did get confirmation that they released all but 4 of our current building permits from this requirement. So we'll be able to move forward with a majority of those permits and get them closed out even while we figure this out. So there's been movement kind of on both sides of that. For the SPWA compliance project, the granular activated carbon filtration system pilot is complete. We're waiting to receive all of the lab data. Then staff will work with a water treatment expert to develop a multi-phase pre-treatment system for the landfill leachate that's being discharged to sewer. For the South Compost Pond, various efforts continue to reduce the odors from the South Compost Pond. FCC has also proposed implementing a clear water filtration treatment process and are looking into the permitting requirements for that treatment process now. So I know they've already had some discussion with the water board on what it would look like to move through that process. FCC's effort to reduce the odors have been effective, but some minor odors have been noted between odor neutralizer dosing. So as long as we see that they're keeping up on that, it seems to be largely effective. But that's all I have for you. If you have any questions.
All right, any questions for Mr. Schmidt? Okay, we'll move to item 6G, Renewable Placer Waste Action Plan update.
Thank you. It's been a while since your board has received an update on the Renewable Placer Waste Action Plan, so I'm happy to be here tonight to provide some history for our new board members and share some progress that we've made and discuss where we're headed. So Eric initially conceived the master planning concept way back in 2013, which is designed to achieve the goals that are outlined in the staff report, which all essentially boil down to ensuring the WATMA's long-term viability, continuing to provide critical services to an ever-growing population, it seems, and creating opportunities to generate more revenue and stabilize rates. In 2016, your board approved an agreement with Jacobs Engineering to facilitate the WAPMA's master planning process and prepare an EIR, which your board ended up certifying in December of 2022. And then in December of 2023, your board approved a subsequent agreement with Jacobs to begin landfill design and permitting of the western property along with other elements of the Renewable Placer Waste Action Plan. And then earlier this year, your board approved an amendment to that agreement to begin initial development of the eastern property, including sewer and entrance designs in response to an increasing interest in the compatible manufacturing opportunities in that area. With the support and foresight of your board and the dedication of your staff, the last 12 years of planning have brought us to a really exciting and pivotal point where your board has the opportunity to make critical projects and goals of the Waste Action Plan as well as the WATMA strategic plan, a reality for the next generation, and to position not only the WATMA but the region for success into the future. The $120 million MRF improvements project that's currently wrapping up was the first in a series of projects that will secure continued regulatory compliance for your jurisdictions and nearly triple the amount of material recovered, which will in turn preserve critical landfill space as well as local control. So now I'm going to take a few minutes to walk you through a high-level overview of some of the other larger projects on the horizon that will also be instrumental in achieving the WATMA's goals. Good? Okay. So this indicates the project locations across the WATMA's 3 properties. Okay. The first project is acceptance of out-of-county materials. Your board has previously expressed a desire for us to reach out to additional jurisdictions or entities to try to garner additional flows. And so the WATMA currently has the ability to accept green and wood waste from entities outside Placer County, and staff intend to return to your board in the next couple of months with a policy to expand that acceptance to municipal solid waste and construction and demolition material. Bringing in this additional material will allow us to immediately realize the full capacity of our new investment out there, while assisting other local entities that are currently struggling to meet SB 1383 compliance, because not everyone is as
Awesome.
awesome as we are. Yes, thank you. The WATMA's MRF is one of only 5 in the state that will meet the regulatory definition of a high diversion facility. The other facilities are located in San Jose, Modesto, and Southern California. We estimate that the WATMA could realize roughly $5 million annually in revenue from these additional flows. And in addition to the financial benefits and maximizing the return on investment, this action will help establish the WATMA as a leader in sustainability through mixed waste processing. Next is wetland mitigation. This is a regulatory requirement. Wetland mitigation will occur on the eastern and western properties in phases, and the project areas shown here indicate that first phase. So while we don't have an exact cost at this time,
Both white areas are the first phase, or one, which is the first phase?
the first phase would be both areas
Both of
shown.
them.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We don't have an exact cost at this time and suspect that it could be significant. But immediate initial investment will allow projects to proceed on those properties and associated cost savings and revenues to be realized sooner. Next, we have a couple energy projects. So the first is landfill gas to energy. Over the past several months, staff have been preparing an RFP for utilization of landfill gas and anticipate issuing the RFP in July and returning to your board before the end of the year to approve an agreement. The project will enhance regulatory compliance, reduce reliance on fossil fuel-based natural gas, and provide a new revenue source estimated at $2 to $3 million annually from royalties. Another project that you've probably heard about for a while, staff have been working toward establishing a biomass facility on site for the last few years to provide a stable regional market for urban and forest wood waste, to provide a new energy source, and to support forest health and fire resilience. The project is also estimated to generate new revenue between $250,000 and $500,000 annually in rent, royalties, and additional material tipping fees. Next project is my favorite because it was my idea. So new public tipping facilities. If you have ever used the facility, you know that it's reached capacity. And with current and expected additional growth in the immediate area, the project is crucial to improving customer safety and convenience, separating public and commercial vehicles, and improved operational efficiency. And will also reserve the current public tipping area for future water treatment and energy projects. This project will likely require a significant initial investment, but will improve customer experience and may eventually result in some modest revenues from a reuse store and a materials yard. And I like to think that happy customers are priceless. Next is Ryan's genius idea of soil excavation and lease. So the idea would be to lease the area on the western property where the first 2 new landfill modules will be located, and leasing that for soil excavation and sale. Some of the benefits of this project include free module excavation, which is estimated at a savings of at least $10 million. It will reduce liability to the WATMA associated with excess soil on site. And staff also intend to include a provision in the contract to provide member agency projects with first dibs, basically, and a lower cost for soil for any regional projects you may have. The WATMA has done this before, albeit on a smaller scale, but the 12 Bridges High School in Lincoln used soil excavated from our Module 6 construction for their new sports complex. In addition to the estimated $10 million in avoided costs, the WATMA would receive revenue from the lease agreement as well.
I'm sorry. Go back to that previous slide. That's on the same, that white square is on the same area as the wetland mitigation.
Correct. We'd have to do
So
the
they can-
mitigation first before we'd be able to start excavation.
Gotcha.
So that, yeah, that
I
project.
guess I was thinking of wetlands as a bank, not as a, so this is not, neither of the wetlands or wetlands mitigation sites?
No, we'd be working with the Placer County Conservation Program to do off-site mitigations.
Okay.
The general philosophy is to have a larger mitigation bank somewhere else as opposed to a patchwork here. So we have set up to be able to have 100% take of our
Development over here will allow for interested parties to site waste management technologies and compatible manufacturing on the WATMA's campus to use recovered materials in new products or energy sources. Establishment of a local circular economy will further preserve landfill capacity and provide a new revenue source. As GSEC presented to your board in March, the WATMA could initially realize several $1 million in annual revenues and tens of millions in annual revenues at complete build-out. So these and other projects will establish the WATMA as a leader in the solid waste, circular economy, and market development spaces. And the WATMA's eastern and western properties present a unique, valuable opportunity to invest not only in our facilities, but in the future of solid waste innovation. We're excited to return to your board to seek direction or approval as these projects progress, and we hope that you're excited too. So happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions or comments? I mean, I
Sure.
think it's pretty amazing. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Director Holden.
Thanks, Director Lane. I was just gonna, I think these are great, creative ideas, and look forward to them coming back. I mean, I think in particular, we've talked a long time about out of county, accepting municipal solid waste out of county, and I think that's, my goal there is that it helps us reduce rates to our residents, and save us, some money, as well as properly utilize the equipment and maybe pay off our debt quicker. I think the excavation idea is a perfect one, getting somebody else to excavate for us and being able to get compensated for that's great. And then all the energy stuff as well is fabulous. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
No, good. I have questions, but it's not really, just a lack of understanding.
This is a great time to ask questions.
So, and Bill may just have said it, and I was sort of thinking about how to frame the question. So we have 2 wetlands mitigation sites, or we have 2 wetland sites.
The
We have
eastern.
wetlands on our property.
We have wetlands on our property that we will have to mitigate for.
Correct.
Then we're gonna dig up, and then that will give us permission to harvest soil and sell the soil.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. It's easier than I thought. Yeah, no, I just,
Well, and if I could really quickly, I think that, when Stephanie said that Ryan had a genius idea, I think even that was kind of downplaying it. I mean, just to put this in perspective, when we recently constructed Module 6, which your board is approving the notice of completion tonight, hopefully, we paid $6 million to excavate that soil. We paid that $6 million. Now we're looking at being more proactive, doing this in advance of when we need this, and realizing $10 million in savings and actual generating revenue instead of paying to have this work done. We'll probably need to excavate how many millions of cubic yards over there, Ryan?
We're gonna do the first 2 modules at the same time, so approximately 2 million cubic yards.
Okay.
and will we be able to get recreational fees from the water skiing lake that will get created? Because you see those if you go up 99 or 70, right, where they've dug out the earth for the overpasses and.
Now, there's some
Turn
more
them
creative
into-
ideas. I mean, you know, some short-term beachfront property.
Okay, well, I think really amazing. A great presentation. I thought it was such a good job of, I mean, because it's been a few years since I even remember being refreshed on it. So just really exciting. I think this is why this is my favorite committee of all my committees, just because they're so entrepreneurial, so many cool things going on.
It's
So
not because Bill Halden's here.
it's because I get to work with all of you. All right, we'll go to item, there's no action, right? Okay. Item 7A, consent agenda. Is there anything that any of my colleagues would like to pull from the consent agenda?
Item B.
Okay, we will pull item B. Is there anything that the public would like to pull from consent? If not, then we can go ahead and do a roll call vote on the remaining items. If I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded.
Director Halden,
Yes.
Director Haddishelt,
Yes.
Director Reedy,
Yes.
Acting Chair Landon.
Yes. Gosh, the anticipation just kills me when I'm waiting for Director Halden. Okay, we will go to item 7B, Fifth Amendment to the agreement with Magma Creative.
So I can, unless other people want the presentation, I just had 2 questions related to it. So this, along with C and D, all have amendments to contracts. And I had asked this offline, but for public purposes, I've addressed here. So my question was, what is the authority's policy about going back out for a new RFP versus doing an amendment? What's our practice there, kind of organization-wide? Because this one is like 6 years.
I think this is it the 5th year for it?
The
So-
fifth it's the Fifth Amendment,
correct.
so it will be the 6th year of service.
So generally, from my understanding of it, is when there's an RFP, they often have a maximum limit of extensions. This one did not. I think this one was an RFP that was for Magma and JSR that eventually split up into 2 separate contracts. Generally, we would go back out after 5 years is what the unofficial policy, because there is not an official policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So either you have, as the management, are not liking what's happening, so you may not wait 5 years.
Correct.
Or after 5 years, you'll generally do it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my second question would be helpful for me, and this is like a procedural thing. So we have all the amendments and the totals by year, essentially, and then totals by category. It'd be nice to know in the future what the actuals were across the categories and the actuals for each year, just to get some idea of, are we hitting the max every year? I assume that these things roll over, so any money that you didn't spend in year 1 can be used in year 2, and use 3, 4, 5, in this case 6.
I think that's a great point. They do roll over. Not all of them hit the maximum. Some go above, which we would come back to the board during the year and ask for an increase in those. But yeah, I think we can, going forward, we can show the actuals.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask my colleague, so on, what's page number, 32? There's task budgets for each of the amendments. What in addition to that were you looking for?
So, like on line 1, well, let's do a better one, like A. So you have the total that's been committed of
177.
177. I was interested in how much we've actually spent out of that across the contract's
Gotcha.
life.
Thank you.
which we can do.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
That's all I had.
One second here.
So
All right.
if you're ready for a motion
Yes.
on that item, I'll move the approval of 7B.
Second.
All right, roll call.
Chair Landon.
Oh, yes,
Maybe
sorry.
just check for public comment on
Oh.
this.
I was just making sure that you were on it. So is there any public comment on this item? No, there is not. Thank you so much. Now roll call vote.
Director Haddishelt,
Yes.
Director Reedy,
Yes.
Director Halden,
Yes.
Acting Chair Landon.
Yes, thank you. We will now move to item 8A, fiscal year 2025-26 budgets.
Yes, thank you. This is a follow-up from last month, bringing the budgets back for your board's consideration. We listened to the comments that your board made at the last meeting and some of the comments that your board submitted to Scott, and have done our best to address them. So generally, the budgets in front of you haven't changed dramatically. The basic format of the budgets are the same. We've added some additional information to hopefully provide context for your board, and I'll highlight some of the notable differences in terms of the numbers. But in the staff report, we did put a section in here about initiatives and key actions, and that kind of dovetails with the presentation that Stephanie provided in terms of where we think we're going over the next year. This is really one way to look at this is how we're working to evolve the budget presentations for your board. And as we noted at the last meeting, what we intend to do for next budget cycle is to have a workshop with your board and talk about these initiatives interactively with your board and build the framework and the budget around that. But given the time, we wanted to start to make that transition with some of these minor changes. So most of the elements that went into the budget really haven't changed, but I would like to highlight some of the notable and worthy changes in the funding itself. So I'm looking at page 55, the first page of the budget. And one of the questions that came up after the last meeting had to do with the investment income and how much we generate in terms of earnings on our reserves. And so I had misspoke last month that we tend to receive more money in terms of investment income from the bonds than we do just on our reserves. And that has now flipped. And that's flipped because our bond proceeds, we've drawn them down. We'll still receive some interest on them over time. But this last year, we saw pretty good earnings on our reserves. The way that we calculate this is we look at, we make an estimate of what kind of earnings we would have on our reserves that were at the end of the previous fiscal year. It's not an exact science, certainly, because we actually have more money coming in and out of our bank and earning money for us, but it's about the best we can do. Typically, we've seen, based on that methodology, earnings rates of 1%, 2% per year. We're seeing more like close to 5% for this year. So it's just been a really good year for us in terms of earnings on our reserves, which is a little bit odd because with some of the tumult in the markets, I would have actually thought that the earnings would be down. So the budget that was presented to your board last month had a very low anticipated investment earnings rate, and that was based on what was happening in the market right around March and April when we were putting the budget together. So we've re-looked at it and said, well, let's be a little bit less conservative there and probably closer to what we think might happen. And so it went from in the $300,000 range to over $800,000 is what we're predicting for next year. As we noted to your board, we'll come back probably in the October timeframe with any adjustments to the budget. So if we're seeing things not tracking with that, we'll adjust accordingly. But that is a pretty noticeable difference. Some of the other ones had to do with timing. Some of the costs associated with the MRF improvements we thought would be incurred this fiscal year. We're now thinking that they're going to be incurred next fiscal year, so that has a bit of an impact in terms of what our projected expenses are for this year and for next year and how that influences our reserve accounts. But on whole, it doesn't change the cost of those systems. It's just really about the timing. On page 56, the first couple line items in those appropriations by account are related to labor. We did go back to our labor estimates and refine those based on when we think additional labor would come on board, given the steps that will be necessary to bring new people on board that are non-county employees. So that actually dropped those labor costs down because it's going to take a number of months before we can have somebody here. So no sense projecting that we'll have him here for a full fiscal year when maybe they're only here for a part of the fiscal year. So we're seeing a little bit of a decrease there, which is, good for the bottom line. On the next page, 57, under the professional and special services, this is where there's actually two that I'd like to highlight. And the first one is,
Sorry, where did you say you were?
I'm sorry, I'm top of page 57. My apologies.
Sorry, Chair.
It is a breakout of professional and special services. And the first line item is financial services. And you'll see that for this current year, 24-25, we had projected about $350,000 for that line item, and we're way, way above projections. This is a reflection of credit card processing fees. And our current credit card processing entity that ties in with our Scalehouse software, their rates have increased dramatically. So we're working with that entity to see if we can go back and reduce those rates, and we're also talking with other entities that can provide this service to see if we can find a better cost.
Maybe you can start taking Bitcoin.
Yes.
Just Venmo it to me.
Now that's innovative. But at this point, assuming that we stay with the current entity and nothing changes, it is a pretty hefty sum that we're paying for credit card processing fees. The flip side of that is that it's a much more secure method of payment for us than dealing with cash. So we actually prefer seeing our customers pay the credit cards or having an account, but everything comes with a cost. The next item down is the admin charges, and those admin charges are a reflection of what Placer County's admin group in Department of Public Works was charging us for doing accounting work and some HR type work. And with being able to internalize those functions now, we believe that going into next fiscal year, we'll be able to drop that down to effectively zero. There was a point not that long ago where that cost was in the $900,000 range. So going from, just shy of $1 million to zero is a pretty good savings there.
Yeah.
But again, that means that we're internalizing some of these costs. And as noted previously, we are recommending that your board add additional staff, which is shown at the end of the report. That's really it for the kind of the big changes in terms of dollar figures in the budget. But we also did add another summary table for your board's insight, and this is on page 68 of your agenda package. And what this is really trying to synthesize that multi-page budget down into tighter line items for revenue and for expenditures, and looking at it over a number of years so your board can start to see trends in these larger groupings. Some of these are certainly a little more volatile, like grants and construction projects. Really hard to really project those and see trends, but on the revenue side, looking at the tip fees, you can see how the tip fees have changed over time. Now, it would be great if that meant that was a lot more tonnage. It really isn't. Those are reflections of rate increases that your board has approved as a result of doing the MRF expansion project. But as you can see, in this year and going into next year, we start to flatten out. We're looking at, in this case, about 2.5% increase going into next year. To Director Halden's comment, all the projects that we have in the queue that will generate revenues will help really tamp that down. And hopefully we'll see, rate increases stabilize to almost go to nothing. On the expenditure side, I think the first four groupings are the ones that are most interesting is labor, and that means internal, your staff labor here. You see that going up, and again, that's a reflection of internalizing operations and bringing more people on board. The external third party, that's contractors, consultants, and you'll see a big jump, and that's a reflection of the cost increases for running the MRF. So looking at, on the order of $4 million more we'll pay to FCC this year to run the system. And that is our largest cost component is MRF and landfill operations. The next one down is internal admin, and this is kind of a catch-all that doesn't fit into the other groups, but you can see, even though we're adding staff, we're looking at trimming, any of the excess fat wherever we can and really do more with less. And then that fourth item is county related. We've relied so heavily on the county for so many years. And as we internalize those operations, you can see cutting back on the costs that we pay directly to the county of, well over $1 million to down, shy of $600,000. So hopefully this at least provides your board a little more insight of what our revenue and cost structure has looked like over the last couple of years. And if this is helpful, we can continue to provide this into the future. So some of these are, kind of testing out proof of concept and concepts for your board. So as we work on next year's fiscal budget, we can bring these types of items to your board, hopefully provide more context and narrative behind the numbers and help formulate stronger budgets in the future. So with that, if there's any questions about the proposed budget, I'd be happy to answer them. And
I had a quick question on
Sure.
page 61 on ongoing operations. There's a pretty good drop for 26, 27, and then it goes back up. I was just wondering why that is.
I'm sorry. Can
Like, it's under uses of funds, ongoing operations, on page 61.
61. Thank you.
Yeah.
I missed right here. The ongoing operations.
Where it drops from
There we go.
50
Okay.
to
All right.
47?
You'd
Yeah.
think I'd know this. I put the darn thing together, but I didn't have these guys.
Well, there's a
pointing
lot
it
of
out to
numbers
me.
in there, so.
Yeah. So we do see it drop down in 26, 27, and then start to pop back up. Let's see if I can find something that substantiates that.
Sorry, I would have asked ahead of time. I just
No,
happened
no,
to notice
that's
it.
all right. I should know this thing well enough by this point that, because that is a pretty noticeable difference of $5 million in change there. I mean, certainly a portion of it, again, is MRF operations. That's always going to be a big chunk.
Is it related to Eastern property?
It could be, but normally we put that under the major
Capital,
construction
gotcha.
project. So I mean, that should really be, it should be all above that line item. So give me a second. I will continue to scan this. If there's any other questions, I'll try
Okay.
and.
And then the only other little comment I had, if it's not super difficult in the future, to maybe have like percentage change on the right-hand side, that'd be super helpful in the future, I think, just for me. So then you can do a quick glance of like, oh, I see one that pops out.
We started doing that because your comment from the last meeting, we actually did that, and and we can certainly do that. What we noticed is it really didn't provide much in the way of insight to us because we saw a lot of positives, negatives, and nothing that was really consistent. If that's something that would be helpful, then we can absolutely do it. But it was so all over the board that it seemed to actually confuse the subject more than provide insight.
I'm not going to fall on the sword over it. I just thought initially, I know in some other committees, they'll have percentages to show,
And I
whether it's a
think,
big
I think
drop
it's
or a
something we can look deeper into. We tried to put it together and it, as Eric said, it was a bit confusing, so we just pulled that out for this one.
Okay, well, I'll defer to your expertise. Are there other questions?
No, I was actually just going to piggyback on the percent thing because I agree too. It's helpful. I mean, it's harder when you have the multiple year ones because I can see it getting confusing there. But when you're comparing this fiscal year, seeing the percent difference between actual and budget is
Yeah.
helpful, and the budget difference between last year's budget and this, I think that may be manageable if you're just doing 2 years versus the 5 year.
Yeah,
Because to
and-
me, it's a cheat sheet to where to dig more when
Yeah.
the number's 2 digits.
Well, I'll tell you.
I mean, not
we will-
always, but
We will certainly give it a shot again, and we can provide your board, as we look for next year, provide your board this kind of information and really seek some feedback of like, what pieces are helpful, what pieces, aren't as helpful, and tailor it so that, Because, you know, when we stood back after last meeting, we realized that we got 12 pages of just tons of numbers here, and it doesn't tell a story. And that's what we really needed to do is provide the narrative and the context behind all this. And so whatever helps your board understand that better, we want to do for your board.
And I found the 68 summary helpful, page 68 summary helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to try to find the answer to?
Oh, I knew you were
Here's-
going to catch me on that.
If you don't
one.
find it right now, it's, you know, I don't need it in this moment, but
Okay. Yeah, because I'm looking at it, and it's not popping out at me.
Okay, I'll give you something. I can distract you with something.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure you,
Okay. Yeah. All right.
We're listening.
Scott's honed in on you.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
ready.
oh, Scott, you're ready?
I-
You're ready?
I'm
Okay.
ready to try.
All right, so I just want to make sure I understand the structure of the budget. So, and you pointed out financial services. So in that column where it has $804,638, that's the estimate of what the cost will be at the end of the fiscal year, right?
Correct.
Which is September 30th, right?
June.
June
No,
30th?
June 30th.
Okay. And, okay, that's what the estimate will be, but you had budgeted for that, 346,243. So, and you mentioned credit cards, so number of transactions that, it's about $450,000 difference there. Is it all transactions?
It's all, it's pretty
Yeah.
much all transactions,
Is
and
it
they just,
1,000, 1,500 transactions? Because,
It is-
that looks like a big number till you break it down to $1.50 per
Right. And so
Just trying to put context
so it
around
isn't,
that big number.
Big jump.
yeah, it isn't the number of transactions we don't anticipate changing. It's the cost from the credit card processing company for doing that work for us. Their rates have gone up. And whether that's a reflection of what's going on in the markets or something else, that's what we're trying to now tease out.
So it's not a per transaction fee, it's their estimate of a.
Yeah, well, there is a per transaction fee. I mean, like, you know, most places, like if you use your credit card,
Right.
the vendor is paying roughly 3%. And I think we're in that same ballpark. It's probably, 2.5%, 2.7% per transaction based on the cost of that transaction. There's some other costs in there that are flat fee costs that are being charged to us by the credit card company that we're trying to understand better, that are pretty significant. Security-related costs and processing costs, and trying to understand, are we getting the best cost from this entity possible, or do we need to start shopping around for other entities that can do that same work for us, that are also qualified to integrate with our Scalehouse software?
Yeah, I mean, going from 3 to 6% effectively is definitely above market.
Right, right. And so, like I said, in looking at some of the bills, it isn't the per transaction rate that is going up per se, but some other, for lack of a better term, hidden costs that the credit card company is charging us that are, in the tens of thousands of dollars per month. So trying to figure out what is the.
Not very hidden at $10,000
Yeah.
a pop.
What's that?
I said they're
Not
not
very
very hidden at $10,000 a pop.
Yeah.
Very pricey hidden fee.
Maybe we should get into the credit card business.
Yeah, no kidding, huh?
Okay, other questions? Director Halden, do you have any questions on the budget?
I don't have a question. I'll jump to a comment. We're in this kind of weird thing where, because we have our bonds, we're required to shoot for revenue that's 125% of our estimated expenses or more. And we usually end up more to be safe. But as a result, we're piling up a great reserve. And, we call it the Rate Stabilization Fund. I guess what I'd like to just say is that for next year, I'd like to see us take money from the Rate Stabilization Fund and incorporate it into next year's budget to help us keep our rates down and stabilize the rates like the fund says. I think that, my first priority with the reserve fund is that we can pay off the callable bonds at 5 years, but I think those are only 9 or 10 million, if I recall, and then lower our debt service, and then down the line. But basically, I just want to kind of foreshadow a discussion for the future that we would use some of that rate stabilization fund to actually stabilize rates and maybe even bring them down a little bit going forward.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Any comments from the public? Okay, with that, do I have a motion?
Did Eric have an answer to your
Oh,
question?
hey, thanks for reminding me.
I don't have this a smoking gun there. I mean, you can look across the board, and we are seeing generally some, increases in costs on the MRF side, the landfill side, but nothing that is jumping out to me that's flagging for $5 million. So I'm going to have to get back to your board.
Okay, yeah, that would be great.
I mean, the good news is you have a couple of years.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
It's out.
Yes.
With that, I'll move to approve the fiscal year 2025, 26. Is this how we do it? Or is somebody supposed to read this for me?
You can do it right now.
All right. Fiscal year 25, 26 budgets for the operating fund, closure/post-closure fund, self-insurance fund, and odor management fund as presented in exhibits A, B, and C, and determine that the recommended action does not constitute a project under the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, section 15378, paren B, and paren 5, and paren. All right.
Second.
All right, that's great. Roll call,
Practicing
please.
to be city clerk.
Director Reedy,
Yes.
Director Halden,
Yes.
Director Haddishelt,
Yes.
Acting Chair Landon.
Yes. All right, any reports from directors?
None for me.
No report.
Okay. I did want to ask Director Reedy, since you brought up the RFP conversation, and we don't have a policy, is that something that we would want to explore about how long do we want contract to go before we do an RFP, or are you comfortable?
I mean, I think
Not
it'd be,
having a
I wouldn't say it's at the top of the list, but I think it's something worth trying to settle a policy on about what we should expect and what vendors should expect, probably.
Okay, well, maybe at some point in the future, like you said, probably not huge pressing issue, but maybe at some point in the next 10 years or less. Maybe in the next 6 months.
Maybe not that
Yeah.
slow.
Okay.
We will look into it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, and no upcoming, I guess that should have maybe been under upcoming agenda items, but any other upcoming agenda items? No? All right, then I will say we are adjourned at 6:26.
Till when?
Until our next meeting, which is on July something. The second Thursday in July,
10th.
All right.
July 10th.
All right. Very good. Nice job.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks.